Hello and welcome to another music related video review. Today we're going to be reviewing the MG30X, FX even, Marshall practice amp. It's a transistor amp, so it's in the sort of the more budget end of the practice amp range that Marshall do. Having said that, it still cost 150 quid a few years ago. Probably get one a little bit less now. So I'm going to talk you through the features on the amp and my overall sort of opinion of it. So overall, I'd probably rate this amp somewhere around a 7 out of 10. And the reason why I say that is there's a couple of things on there that could be a bit better. The thing that let it down for me personally was the build quality a little bit. On the inputs here, it's just a plastic nut going over a plastic bit of thread, and the very first time that I tripped over the lead, which, you know, these are the sorts of things that are going to happen with guitars and really should be designed for, the thread sort of being plastic just stripped off, and then I found that every time basically there was any sort of movement on the wire, it was pretty much making that sort of fall out of the amp, and not ideal. So I had to glue it back in place, which kind of a bit of a bummer, because if it ever needs to come apart for repairs, it's going to be a bit of a problem. In terms of the things that I do like about it, however, is the thing that I pretty much bought the the amp for was the ability to save your sounds into the guitar, in terms of once you've found a particular setup that you like the sound of. So you've got your gain and your mids and trebles and lows and everything all set just the way you like. You can see here, we're on the overdrive channel now. If I move any of these dials, you'll see that that light there has now begun to flash. Now what that means is that the settings that I'm set to now aren't stored in the amp's memory. If I want to be able to recall these settings, if I found a tone that I really like the sound of, by simply tapping the store button here, that light will stop flashing. So what that now means is that these settings are saved into the amp, so I can mess around with all of these dials and really go to town on them, and it'll go back to a flashing light, which means obviously I've not got these settings stored, as I just said. By simply tapping on the button there, it will go back to solid light, and it will go back to the pre-saved overdrive sound that I had saved on the guitar, on the amp even. So I can sort of very quickly just decide that I'm going to experiment. If I don't like what I've got, I can go back to sort of a tone that I know that I like the sound of. So that's something that I really liked on this amp. The one other thing that's slightly disappointing is the effects dial. You've got a choice of chorus, flanger, phaser or delay. But because they're on a dial, you can only select one of the 4 effects to use at any one time. So you can't have like a combination of chorus and delay or anything like that, which is a little bit disappointing, because it's a bit restricting in terms of the sounds that you can create. You can, I mean, on the amps higher up the range, each one of those has their own separate control. It smacks a little bit that Marshall restricts you on the lower down in the range amps. In terms of the effects that you can use. I mean, there is much sort of cheaper versions of these amps. Sort of, you can go down sort of 5 and 10 watt versions, the 30 denoting that it's a 30 watt amp. In terms of the actual quality of the sound, it's pretty good. I mean, you've got a choice of the clean and crunch on the sort of the clean side of the channels, and then you've got the sort of lower of the 2 overdrive settings, and then the really sort of distorted, heavily overdriven sounds there. So I'll give you a very quick little demonstration. Now please forgive me, because I've not warmed up my fingers at all for this, so it's probably going to sound diabolical, but we will go for, where's our volume gone? It normally helps when you're using an amplifier to plug the guitar in. So this is the clean channel now. Forgive the guitar being slightly out of tune. Or we can then switch to, let's grab a pick, the overdrive channel, and again, obviously I've got this pre-saved setting now, so we can go straight into a bit of rock and roll. Oh, let's turn the volume up. So it's got some really nice little tones that it's capable of producing there. We can go to like a more sort of crunch sound. Ignore the doorbell, please. And then we've got like a lighter of the two overdrive. So overall, like I say, I would give this amp a 7 out of 10.